The alarm started before I even opened my eyes. Not the soft chime that meant a docking bay was opening, not the low hum that meant the engines were shifting speed. This was the sharp, screaming kind. The kind that meant something on the ship had gone very wrong, very fast. My first instinct was not to run. It was to freeze. That is what my body has always done. On the moon where I hatched, freezing kept us alive. Predators there hunted movement, not shape. If you went still, if you turned the color of the rock around you, if you made not one sound, you could survive almost anything. My whole body remembers that lesson even now, light years away from that moon, tucked inside a metal ship built by giants. So when the lights flickered red and the floor shook under a distant impact, I did what 1,000 generations before me had done. I folded my wings tight against my back. I pressed myself into the shadow behind a storage crate. I went quiet. But quiet on this ship is the worst thing I could possibly be. I did not understand that yet. Not fully. Not until the shaking got worse, and I heard boots pounding down the corridor outside the cargo hold, and a voice calling a name over and over into the smoke. My name. Not my real name. The one only my own kind could pronounce properly. All clicks and low hums. The short version. The version a human mouth could shape. Mireth. I heard him before I saw him. Sam's voice was rough, cracking in a way I had never heard before. Not even during storms. Not even during the time a cargo net snapped and nearly took his hand with it. He sounded scared, truly scared, and somehow that frightened me more than the alarms did. I should explain who I am, and why a human was tearing through a burning corridor shouting my name like I mattered more than the ship itself. I am small, smaller than a human's forearm, wingtip to wingtip. My kind are sometimes called dragons by the people who first found us, though we are nothing like the fire-breathing giants in their old stories. We are soft-voiced, quick, and built for hiding. Most of the galaxy does not think much of us. To bigger species, we are pests, or pets, or curiosities kept in glass tanks on wealthy ships, small enough to overlook, small enough to forget. I stowed away on this ship as a hatchling, half-starved, after my home was lost to a mining accident that swallowed an entire valley. I do not like to think about that day. I remember heat and falling rock and the sound of my whole colony calling to each other in the dark, fewer and fewer voices answering each time. I remember being alone in a crate of spare parts, certain I would die there. And then a human boy found me. Sam was not much older than a boy back then, new to deck work, still learning which wires not to touch. He opened that crate looking for a fuel coupling and found me instead, curled into the smallest shape I could make, trying to disappear. He did not scream. He did not report me to be studied or sold. He looked at me for a long moment, and then he did something none of my own kind would ever have done for a stranger. He fed me. That was years ago now. Since then, I have lived in the folds of his jacket, in the warm vents above the engine room, in the little space behind his bunk where the metal curves just right for sleeping. The rest of the crew barely notices me. I am good at being unnoticed. It is the one skill my whole species is built for. But Sam always notices, even when I do not want him to. A few weeks before the alarm started screaming, we had stopped at a trading station for supplies. I slipped off his shoulder while he argued with a merchant about the price of fuel filters, and I wandered along a row of stalls, drawn by a glint of light. It was a bell, tiny, barely bigger than a seed, made of some pale metal that caught the light and sang a small clear note whenever it moved. To the merchant, it was junk, a broken trinket not worth selling. To me, it was perfect. I looped its little cord around my neck without really thinking about why. When Sam found me again, he stopped walking. He stared at the bell for a long moment, and something in his face changed. He did not laugh, the way I expected. His shoulders dropped, like a weight had lifted off them. I did not understand it then. I thought he simply liked the sound. It was only weeks later that he told me the truth. sitting on the edge of his bunk while I curled against his hand. He said that the worst part of caring about something small was the quiet. He said that every time I went still and hid, the way my instincts told me to, he could not tell if I was safe or if I was gone. Hiding looked the same either way to him. A predator on my world reads stillness as safety. A human reads stillness as danger, as loss, as the terrible silence before bad news. He said the bell meant he would never have to wonder again. If I was scared, if I hid, if I curled into the smallest shape I could make, the bell would still sing softly and tell him exactly where to look. I laughed at him a little that night. I told him my kind had survived 1,000 years by being impossible to find. I told him hiding was not a flaw to be fixed. It was the only reason my ancestors were alive to have descendants at all. He just smiled and said humans were built differently. He said his whole species had spent its entire history refusing to leave anyone behind, no matter how small, no matter how hidden, no matter how far. He said searching was not something humans did occasionally. It was something woven so deep into them that giving up the search felt like giving up on being human at all. I did not believe him completely, not until the day the alarm started screaming and the corridor filled with smoke. Crouched behind that crate, wings folded, breath held, I felt the old instinct take over completely. Every part of me wanted to stay exactly where I was, exactly this still, until the danger passed or did not. But the bell around my neck trembled with every shaking breath I took, and it sang, soft and small, again and again. And Sam heard it. I will never forget the sound of him finding that crate, shoving it aside with strength that should not have belonged to someone who once cried over a splinter. I will never forget his hands closing around me, gentle even in the middle of chaos, even with smoke burning both our lungs. He did not check the ship's status first. He did not wait for an all clear. He came straight into danger, following nothing but a tiny sound, because somewhere inside him, leaving me hidden and unfound, was simply not an option his mind would accept. We made it to the escape pod together, sealed the hatch seconds before the corridor behind us folded in on itself. I sat curled in his shaking hands as the pod launched, watching the ship grow smaller through the tiny window, and for the first time in my whole life, I understood something my instincts had never taught me. Surviving alone was not the only way to survive. In the quiet hours after, drifting safely while rescue signals blinked steadily around us, I thought about everything I had learned about humans since that day Sam opened a crate and found a starving hatchling instead of a fuel coupling. Humans build beacons into everything. They carve names into stone so no one is forgotten. They send ships across unimaginable distances just to bring one lost person home. To my kind, this looked like recklessness for the longest time. Why spend so much energy chasing something so small? Why risk so much for one voice in the dark? Now I understood. It was not recklessness at all. It was a promise, repeated so many times across so many generations that it became instinct just as deep as my own need to hide. A promise that said, you will never be forgotten. No matter how small you are, no matter how well you hide, someone will always come looking. The bell was never really about being found in an emergency. Sam had given me something far bigger than that, wrapped in something small enough to fit around my neck. He had given me his promise, worn where I could feel it every single day, humming softly against my chest with every breath I took. Weeks later, back aboard a new ship, safe and warm, I found myself reaching for that same bell every morning, without needing a reason. Not because danger was near, not because I feared getting lost. I wore it simply because I liked the feeling of being someone's to find. My whole species learned, over countless generations, how to disappear. How to go quiet, how to go still, how to become nothing more than shadow and stone, until danger passed us by unnoticed. It kept us alive for a very long time, but my human taught me something my instincts never could. Staying hidden might keep you breathing, but it is not the same as being loved. Being loved means someone is always listening for the smallest sound you make, ready to come running the moment they hear it. So now I wear my bell everywhere, not because I am afraid of being lost, because I never want him to stop looking for me, and I never want to stop being found.